this, of course, leads to this question you asked about how will 9 billion people be supported using the current agricultural systems. Now, clearly those systems over the next few decades, I believe, will fail to feed people because of this problem of energy. And that this occurs in quite surprising ways, like the fact that the biofuel debate showed that in a total free market world, the cars of 1 billion middle-class people could, if necessary, outbid the other many billions of people on the planet for their food supply to feed the cars. And that those people could pay more for the agricultural productivity than the other 6 billion people could pay for their food. So we have a lot of structural problems that are clearly broadly around the distribution of food, we could say, rather than the production. But a lot of those problems are made worse because of that centralised global marketing of food. Similarly, richer people can afford to pay enough for meat that they can outbid the rest of the world for food grains to feed to animals so they can then eat the animals. So the reform of these things, in theory, should be possible, but these problems have been evident for at least 50 years. And in a way, these problems are getting worse. So clearly, markets are not going to change this. And whether things like permaculture activism change this remains to be seen. But what we do know is that if the land where people live is devoted to food production for them, and small-scale farmers are assisted in simple organic methods and methods associated with permaculture, then they can actually produce far more food and in those regional communities become far more self-reliant. And we can see that a restructuring in the behaviour, and of course permaculture is equally concerned with this behaviour change as it is with the production change. So yes, permaculture involves the use of animals for both their yields and their ecological services, but we would never see it appropriate to feed human quality grain to animals, especially animals like cows. So a permaculture approach is to definitely almost everywhere eat less meat and eat different types of meat, and to eat local food that's in season rather than food from a long way away that's out of season. And all of these changes make possible significant increases in effective food production. And we see this, we know this from the experience in living this way, that when we try and grow food ourselves, we can get better at growing a greater variety, a greater diversity, a greater quantity. But in the end, we run up against limits of climate, limits of pests, and then we can see how changing our behaviour in what we want to eat is an easier change. So if we eat what the garden produces, eat in season, eat the animals which are in natural surplus, that whether they are pest animals or the natural byproduct of our, having dairy goats, and occasionally there is some meat to eat. if we accept those natural flows, we find that we have a much more efficient design system. So I would never claim that permaculture can magically, massively increase world food production, especially with less fossil fuel available and more expensive fossil fuel. But I think the combination of new biological solutions associated with permaculture and the restructuring to producing food where people live, and the restructuring of diet, especially in the affluent world, away from concentrated foods, especially animal concentrates, to more local, in-seasonal, fresh food. And we can see some of this through things like the slow food movement and other related ideas. Then we can feed 9 billion people applying permaculture design thinking to the whole system. But I believe that will only come through many, many diverse examples from the bottom up, rather than saying, how can we convince policymakers at the top to do this?